I know we just took a minute and a half, but whenever I have the chance to speak, to open my mouth and let words come out, I always try to center myself in the hope and prayer that my words add value. And so I want to thank you for being present, for bringing yourselves, and I want to thank this dynamic panel here that has joined me in what I believe will be a very timely and powerful discussion about healing. Building loving communities, bridging divides, is really about healing. And I don't think I have to tell you, we could sure use that now. There is so much hate and pain that has been weaponized, and so many wedges of division that it can be hard to imagine what different looks like. We're going to take that on, and through our perspectives and experiences and lived journeys, share some thoughts around what it means to build loving communities and to bridge divides. And as Sarah and my dear brother Owsley mentioned, if y'all have heard me say anything over the past few years, you've probably heard this phrase, from the hood to the holler. Matter of fact, from the hood to the holler. There you go. Well, that is so much more than just a slogan or branding that folks wear on hoodies. I believe it is at the heart of why I live today. It is at the center of my why. And my why is my family. You all are my family. And the journey of figuring out how to love myself, how to stand up for my community, as was mentioned in my bio. And it's funny, I actually clapped when I heard the bio because I'm like, oh, that's about me. That just lets you know how good God is. But all of my family come in from the West End of Louisville, and I always say that we weren't poor. We had too much faith, too much love to ever say the word poor. I didn't even know what that meant until college, when I realized, we actually are poor because we ain't have any money. And being pissed off about these lived experiences because, I see my mom, she's my super shero, she's incredible, she's hardworking. Why are we struggling the way that we're struggling? It led me on a journey to be about solutions, which again was at the heart of me loving myself, loving my family, loving my community. And it led me across Kentucky. This guy from 35th and Market, crisscrossing the Commonwealth of Kentucky, going into spaces that are called sundown towns, where there are still Confederate flags to this day, Kentucky, talking about love and humanity and family and what I'm fighting for. And, when your house is on fire, it takes some courage to actually get up and run through that fire and to save yourself or to put the fire out. That courage and that sense of urgency is why I do what I do. It's why I show up the way I show up. And once I realized that government was at the center of so many of the problems we face through policies and budgetary decisions, I determined I was going to get in the middle of all of that and cause as much good trouble as I could. And you know what? As I started going across Kentucky, determined to build coalitions to help support my community in the West End of Louisville, I realized, wait a minute. The same things I'm fighting for my family, you're fighting those battles too. The same trauma that I deal with, I see that in you. And I was a director of Fish and Wildlife. This is where it really came to fruition for me. So, you see me here. Young black guy, well, I ain't as young as I used to be, but at that time I was younger, and I was a director of Fish and Wildlife, and there were about 700 employees altogether, when you include seasonal and temp, 3 black people, and I was the only director. So every room I go in, I get the looks, I get the questions. There were blogs, called me the names that you know they called me. But I was the director. I signed the paycheck, so they had to listen to me. And the values of family, of community, of loving one another, I brought that into this space because that's all I know. And so when I would talk to Fish and Wildlife employees, workers, dedicated Kentuckians, I would open up and share my story. And when we did that, we found common bonds. And when we found those common bonds, we realized our connection as family. And then we decided to work together. I know that still works. I still believe in it. And I think we saw a really good dose of it a little over a week ago on November 7th. Mm-hmm. We need to see a whole lot more of it, though. And so when I had this realization that, wait a minute, we're connected, I determined that if we're going to ever change anything in Kentucky, in this country, if we're ever going to end generational poverty, if we're ever going to uproot structural racism, we're going to have to do it together. And the only way you come together in truth is through love. Love is the glue. It's that force that compels you to be your best, that compels you to see outside of yourself. And I know that we have the ability to lean into that. And while you're here listening to us today, I hope that you would charge yourself to ask yourself, how can I love myself better? Because that's where it starts. How can I love my neighbors better? How can I put love into action? And there are divisions. Look, if we took time to go across the room, lift up any issue, and I've heard about some of the discourse earlier today, very powerful discussions that are happening, you're gonna find a lot of disagreement on everything. Disagreement can be healthy, and it is necessary. But we have to still be able to see the humanity in one another. We have to remember that even if we disagree, we're in this daggone thing together. I ain't cuss. We have to remember that. And I remember the exact moment. It was divine. It was like the skies parted. I was on an Eastern Kentucky tour going across Appalachia, and so I was running for U.S. Senate in 2020. I am an absolute underdog. I'm going up against one of the most well-funded Senate campaigns in history, and I knew we could beat it because I understand the power of people. So I determined I'm gonna go to the exact parts of Kentucky where all the smart people say, don't even waste your time. They're not gonna support you, and hey, have you looked in the mirror? You're black, sir, don't go there. My response to that was, nah, that's my family. And family shows up for one another. And so I went. And this is the first time I really learned about hollers. As we're going down windy roads, and I'm seeing homes that look like they in Russell, abandoned lots, couches in the front yard, roofs caving in, I'm thinking, man, there's a house like that up the street from my mom. And I start canvassing, knocking on doors to talk to folks, telling them why I'm here, that I think we deserve clean water. I think we should be able to have health care. I'm a type 1 diabetic. I've rationed my insulin. Nobody should have to do that. And you know what? When I started talking about humanity, regardless of what the party was, I knocked on doors, had Trump signs, I got pictures to prove it. The response was overwhelmingly the same. One, it was, thank you for caring enough to even come talk to me because nobody talks to me. And then it was, man, I want the same thing. You know, our lights are cut off because we're trying to get our medicine and we couldn't afford both. I'm saying this to say, there is still room to build community because we are still in it together. And when that light bulb went off for me, I was like, you know what? We got to define this the right way. So I grew up in the church. Both my parents are ministers, and there's like call and response. That's where from the hood to that's that energy. And we're leaving Letcher, we're going down the Pike, we crisscrossing. I was like, we got to capture this so people can feel what this is. We got to take this message from Pike to the Purchase. That's where I started. I'm hitting the alliteration on the P's. And I'm like, you know what? I don't think that hits hard enough. I don't want to make it feel just so central on any specific location. How do we describe this? And when I was up in the holler saying, man, that looks like a house on my mom's block, I was like, that's it. We're going to take this message from my hood to their holler to everywhere, that we are in this together. And if we lean on each other and if we love on each other, we're going to win together. And you all saw the things that transpired, all the history and big things that were done and the work that continues. I understand something that I think you see too, which is why you're here, is that in the times of crisis, in times of pain, what do you do? To me, you go to the safe space. And my proposition for us as Kentuckians, as human beings, is that we build safe spaces everywhere, which is essentially strong, thriving communities. And you do that by seeing the humanity in others, calling out injustice, speaking up for truth, and extending an arm, extending a hand, extending your heart. And my heart is really heavy right now because of what's going on in the world. There are so many people that feel invisible. We can be the remedy to that by shining our light, by being the example of kindness, the example of compassion, and the example of urgent action to bend the arc, that arc of the moral universe, toward justice, which is really at the core, just love in action. So I'm looking forward. Look, that's worth an applause. Whoever that was putting you on the spot. I'm looking forward to this discussion today because we have creative energy, we have organizing, we have truth in activism, we have executive excellence. We're going to really cover the gamut here in a discussion of building loving communities and bridging divides. All right, so let's get into it.